Have you ever had one of those days on the water? You know the one. You're on a spot where you know for a fact there are fish. You pull out that one lure, the old reliable, the one that never ever lets you down. You cast it out with all the confidence in the world and you get nothing. Not a tick, not a tap, not even a curious follow. It feels like you're throwing a rock into a swimming pool. Well, what if I told you that lure, your most trusted weapon, is the very reason you're not getting bit? What if, to the fish you're targeting, that lure is now completely and utterly invisible? In this video, we're going to pull back the curtain on a hard truth of modern fishing. We're going to talk about why the most popular lures become useless on pressured water. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll look at your tackle box in a whole new light. So let me ask you this and be honest in the comments. What is that number one can't-fail lure for you? Let's see how many of us are relying on the same old magic trick. For generations, fishing knowledge was passed down with a kind of reverence. Your dad or grandpa gave you a jitterbug or a Johnson silver minnow and said, "This is all you need." And for a long time, they were right. Certain lures just had the magic. They produced time and time again until they became more than just a piece of plastic or metal. They became an article of faith. We've all got them. That one crankbait with the teeth marks all over it, the paint half chewed off. We tie it on without thinking because its history gives us confidence. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The fishing world has changed more in the last 20 years than it did in the 100 before. We have more anglers on the water, more advanced electronics finding the fish, and a massive culture of catch and release. This combination has created a new type of fish, an educated, wary, and highly pressured fish. They've seen it all before, and the very lures we have the most faith in are the ones they've learned to fear the most. Let's start with what I call the old reliable paradox. The very thing that makes a lure a legend is what eventually leads to its downfall. Think about it. Why did it become your go-to lure? Because it worked. It caught fish, not just for you, but for thousands of other anglers who saw it in magazines or on TV. It became popular, a bestseller. And because of that, it has been thrown at fish in nearly every popular lake and river across the country millions and millions of times. The paradox is that its effectiveness led to its overexposure. It's like a hit song on the radio. The first 100 times you hear it, you love it. But after the 10,000th time, it becomes background noise that your brain actively tunes out. For a pressured bass, that classic lure is that overplayed song. It's a signal that has been so deeply associated with a negative experience, being hooked, fighting, seeing the inside of a boat, that the fish's brain has developed a filter to simply ignore it for self-preservation. So what is fishing pressure? Well, really, we use that term all the time, but it's more than just seeing a bunch of boats on the lake. You should think of fishing pressure as the collective education level of the fish in a body of water. Every single cast from every single angler is a potential lesson. When a fish gets caught on a specific lure and is released, it doesn't just swim away with a sore mouth. It swims away with a memory. It might not be a complex thought like a human, but it's a powerful, conditioned response. It learns that a certain vibration, a certain flash, or a certain shape moving in a certain way is a direct threat. Now multiply that one experience by hundreds or even thousands of fish in a single season. The water itself becomes a classroom, and the curriculum is how to identify and avoid the most common lures. Your Saturday morning fishing trip isn't just a hunt, it's an exam, and the fish have been studying all week. This brings us to the fish's memory. It's a topic people love to debate, but both scientific studies and overwhelming anecdotal evidence show that fish, especially intelligent predators like largemouth bass, can and do learn from experience. They can remember negative associations for months, if not longer. Think of that one big, wise old bass that lives under the town dock. Everyone has tried to catch her. She's seen every lure imaginable. Why do you think she's so hard to catch? It's not because she's never hungry. It's because she has a PhD in lure identification. She has learned to associate the specific wobble of a wiggle wart or the distinct plop of a hula popper with danger. When your old reliable swims past her, she doesn't see an easy meal. She sees the same old trick that her less fortunate cousins fell for last week. Her brain instantly flags it as not food, and she remains safely tucked away, leaving you to wonder if there are any fish there at all. Here's a simple way to visualize this. Imagine you're walking down a busy city street. All around you there are bright, flashing neon signs, all shouting for your attention. At first, you might notice a few, but after just a few minutes, your brain starts to filter them out. It becomes a blur of meaningless visual noise. Now, imagine in the middle of all that chaos, you see a simple, handwritten sign on a piece of cardboard. Your eye is immediately drawn to it, precisely because it's different. It breaks the pattern. This is exactly what's happening under the water. The most popular lures are those loud, flashing neon signs. The fish have become so conditioned to their presence that they don't even register them as individual objects anymore. They are just part of the background noise. Your job, as an angler trying to catch these conditioned fish, is to show them that simple, handwritten sign. Something they haven't seen before and can't immediately categorize as a threat. Now let's get more specific and talk about the sound signature. Many of our most trusted lures, especially hard baits, are famous for their sound. Think of the classic rat-tail trap. That tight, loud B rattle sound is iconic. For decades, that sound was a dinner bell for bass. It triggered an aggressive, predatory response. But on a pressured lake today, that exact same sound can be a repellent. Think about it from the fish's perspective. It's sitting in a hydrilla bed, and all day long it hears that same distinct shh, shh, shh sound passing overhead, over and over again. It has learned that this specific frequency, this specific cadence, is associated with danger. So when your lure with that exact same sound signature comes ripping by, the fish doesn't even need to see it. It hears the danger coming from 50 feet away and either hunkers down or moves away. Your lure has effectively warned the fish of its own presence. Imagine the water having a kind of soundscape. It's not silent down there. There's the sound of baitfish scattering, the hum of trolling motors, and the sounds of nature. Into this soundscape, we introduce our lures. For years, the unique rattle of a Model A bomber or the clicking of a spinnerbait blade was a novel sound, something that stood out and sparked curiosity. But now, on a busy Saturday at a popular reservoir, those sounds are no longer unique. They are the dominant, repetitive, man-made noises in the environment. It's like living next to a railroad track. The first few nights, the train wakes you up. After a month, you don't even hear it anymore. The fish have adapted. They've learned to tune out the common frequencies of the top-selling lures. This is why sometimes a silent or stealth version of a popular crankbait can be absolutely deadly. It has the same action the fish are used to seeing, but it's missing the auditory red flag they've been trained to avoid. Beyond sound, there's the visual signature. This is about the specific action, the wobble, the flash, and the profile of a lure. A classic Rapala minnow, for instance, has a very specific, tight, rolling wobble. It's beautiful and effective, and fish have been conditioned to recognize it from a mile away. The same goes for the wide hunting action of a square-bill crankbait or the telltale shimmy of a falling senko. These actions are like fingerprints, and while they were once irresistible, they have now become dead giveaways on pressured water. If a fish has been caught, or has seen its buddy get caught, on a lure with that exact visual fingerprint, it will avoid anything that moves in a similar way. It doesn't matter if you change the color from fire tiger to bluegill. You can paint it hot pink, but if it still wobbles like the lure that pricked it last week, it's not going to get eaten. The movement itself has become the warning sign. Now let's explore a more speculative but fascinating idea. Could there be a genetic angle to this? In heavily fished catch-and-release waters, think about which fish are being removed from the breeding population, even temporarily. It's the aggressive ones, the less cautious ones, the ones that are genetically predisposed to chasing down and smashing a standard common lure. The smarter, more timid, or more observant fish, the ones that ignore that chatterbait or spinnerbait, are the ones that are left alone to grow big and to reproduce. Over many, many generations, is it possible that we are unintentionally breeding a smarter, more lure-shy strain of fish? We are selectively rewarding the fish that are wise to our most common tricks. This would mean that the fish being born today in popular fisheries are literally the descendants of the most difficult-to-catch fish from years past. They are born with an inherited suspicion, making our old, reliable lures even less effective from the start. Let's use a perfect case study, the senko. When it first came out, it was nothing short of a revolution. It was a magic trick. You just Texas-rigged it weightless, cast it out and let it fall. The subtle, horizontal shimmy on the fall was something Base had never seen before, and they absolutely could not resist it. For years, it was arguably the most effective base lure ever created. But what about now? Go to any highly pressured lake in the country, and you'll find that the standard wacky-rigged or Texas-rigged senko gets far fewer bites. The fish have seen it. They've been caught on it. They've learned the trick. Anglers have had to adapt, using it on Nico rigs, on shaky heads, or cutting it down for Ned rigs, just to present that same plastic in a way the fish haven't seen a million times. The senko itself is still a great bait, but its original magic presentation has become another old reliable that savvy fish have learned to ignore. Now I can already hear some of you typing in the comments, "Hey, I still catch plenty of fish on my old radel trap." And you're absolutely right. I'm not saying these lures have stopped working entirely everywhere all the time. Of course they haven't. If you're fishing on a private pond, a remote river, or even on a public lake during an aggressive feeding window, that old reliable can still be the best thing in your box. When fish are fired up and competing for food, they are far less discerning. But this conversation isn't about the easy days. It's about the tough days. It's about when the sun is high, the water is calm, and you've had 4 other boats fish the same shoreline ahead of you. It's about those moments when you need an edge. On those days, relying on the same lure everyone else is throwing is a recipe for frustration. It's about understanding that what works in one situation is a liability in another, and being willing to adapt. So, how do we fight this? The first step is simply to break the pattern, and that starts in your own mind. The solution isn't to take all your favorite lures and throw them in the trash. The solution is to develop a new awareness on the water. When you pull up to a spot and you're not getting bites on your confidence bait, you need to stop thinking the fish aren't here or the fish aren't biting. You need to start thinking the fish have seen this, they are ignoring this. The moment you make that mental shift, a whole new world of possibilities opens up. You stop trying to force feed them the lure you want to throw, and you start trying to figure out the lure they haven't been conditioned to reject. This is the first and most critical step, recognizing that your lure might be the problem, not the fish. The core principle that will solve this problem is the power of different. At their most basic level, predatory fish are wired with two conflicting instincts, curiosity and caution. A standard popular lure on a pressured lake triggers their caution. It's familiar, and familiarity is associated with danger. Therefore, your goal is to trigger their curiosity instead. You want to present a lure that is just different enough from the norm that it doesn't set off their alarm bells. It could be a different sound, a different vibration, a different fall rate, or a different profile. It doesn't have to be a wildly bizarre, unheard of lure. It just needs to break the monotonous pattern of sight and sound that the fish have been subjected to all day or all season. When a fish encounters something new, its predatory instinct to investigate and potentially eat has a chance to override its conditioned caution. Let's talk about subtle modifications, starting with sound. This is one of the easiest ways to present something different without even changing your lure. Do you have a favorite rattling crankbait that isn't working? Find a silent version from the same company. It will have the exact same action and profile, but it will be missing the auditory fingerprint the fish are avoiding. You can even take it a step further. Some pro anglers will carefully drill a tiny hole in a rattling lure, dump out the BBS, and seal it with epoxy to create their own silent version. Conversely, if everyone is throwing silent finesse baits, you could add a glass rattle to your soft plastic to create a new sound. It's not about loud versus quiet. It's about being different from the ambient lure noise on that particular day. Next up are subtle modifications to a lure's action. This can be even more effective than changing the sound. Take your favorite crankbait. You can tune the line tie slightly to one side, causing it to run erratically, kicking out to the left or right unexpectedly. This unpredictability can trigger strikes from fish that would ignore a perfectly tuned, repetitive wobble. What about your jigs? Everyone uses a standard craw-style trailer. Try a paddle-tail swim bait as a trailer instead. This will completely change the way the jig falls and moves through the water, giving it a totally new visual signature. Even your retrieve can be a modification. If everyone is burning a spinnerbait back to the boat, try slow rolling it along the bottom. These small tweaks don't require buying new lures. They require a new way of thinking about the lures you already own. This leads us to what I call the color myth in pressured water. We as anglers are absolutely obsessed with color. We have tackle boxes filled with dozens of nearly identical lures in slightly different shades of green pumpkin or sexy shad. And while color certainly matters in terms of water clarity and matching the hatch, it is one of the last things a pressured fish considers. If the sound and the action of your lure have already been flagged by the fish's brain as a known threat, the color is completely irrelevant. The fish has already made its decision not to eat it before it even gets close enough to see the flake pattern in the paint job. Changing from Tennessee shad to gizzard shad on a crankbait whose sound and wobble the fish already distrust is a waste of time. You have to change the core signature of the bait first. Only then does color become a factor worth considering. So, what's one way to present a truly different signature? You can go old school, but I mean really old school. I'm not talking about lures from 10 years ago. I'm talking about digging through your grandpa's forgotten tackle box for lures that haven't been popular in 40 or 50 years. Think about old wooden plugs, metal spoons like the Daredevil, or forgotten relics like the Lazy Ike. The current generation of bass in your local lake has likely never seen these lures before. They have no conditioned response to them. The wobble of a hand-carved wooden plug is completely different from a modern, mass-produced plastic crankbait. The slow, wide flash of a heavy metal spoon is nothing like the frantic vibration of a chatterbait. These forgotten classics can be your secret weapon because to an educated fish, they are brand new. There's a reason the finesse revolution has taken hold so strongly, especially in tournaments. It's a direct response to this problem of pressured fish. Finesse techniques, by their very nature, are subtle. A Ned rig, which is essentially a small piece of plastic on a light mushroom head, doesn't scream, "I am a dangerous artificial lure," as it slowly drifts to the bottom. It's unobtrusive. It has a very neutral sound signature and a non-aggressive visual signature. It slips past the fish's built-in threat detection system. It looks like a small, easy, non-threatening meal. This is why a technique that looks like it would barely catch a bluegill can be the top producer on a tough day full of boat traffic. It's not trying to trigger an aggressive reaction. It's trying to avoid triggering a cautious one. Let's paint a clear, real-world picture. Imagine you're in a weekend tournament on a popular lake. You pull up to a classic main lake point. You can see on your electronics that there are fish here. You start throwing your go-to lure for this situation, a big, thumping half-ounce bladed jig. You and your partner throw it for 20 minutes without a single bite. You see another boat nearby doing the exact same thing. Everyone is throwing the same thing. You're getting frustrated. But then you remember this conversation. You put down the bladed jig and pick up something with a totally different vibration, like a scrounger head jig, with a simple fluke-style trailer. It has a much more subtle, tight wobble. On your third cast, you feel that distinct thump. It's a 4-pounder. You didn't find new fish. You just showed the same fish a signature they hadn't been conditioned to ignore. We've talked a lot about lures and techniques, but the biggest obstacle is the mental hurdle. Putting down that confidence bait is hard. It feels like you're benching your star player. That lure is loaded with positive memories of past catches, and tying it on gives you a psychological boost. Reaching for a lure you've never caught a fish on, or one that looks weird and unconventional, feels like a gamble. It feels like you're decreasing your chances, but you have to force yourself to do it. You have to trust the process and understand that on pressured water, your greatest strength, that one lure you know inside and out, can also be your biggest weakness. The fish know it just as well as you do. True confidence isn't in one single lure. It's in your ability to adapt and figure out the puzzle on any given day. Ultimately, your new goal shouldn't be to find a new old reliable. If you do and it becomes popular, you'll end up right back in the same situation a few years from now. Instead, the goal is to build a system in your tackle box. You need to think less about specific brands and more about specific signatures. You should have lures that cover different vibrational frequencies, from the wide thump of a squarebill to the tight shimmer of a lipless crank to the subtle sway of a spy bait. You need lures that fall at different rates. You need profiles that are tall and short, wide and thin. Your tackle box should be a toolbox of options designed to break patterns. That way, when one signature is being ignored, you have a completely different look to show them. Your new old reliable is not a single lure. It's your ability to be unpredictable. So let's bring it all home. Is that old reliable lure from your tackle box truly invisible to modern pressured fish? On tough days, in waters that see a lot of traffic, the answer is a resounding yes. It's not that it's a bad lure, it was a great lure. So great, in fact, that it educated generations of fish to avoid its specific signature of sound, sight, and vibration. The most critical takeaway from all of this is to shift your entire mindset. Stop asking, what's my favorite lure, and start asking, What lure have these fish been conditioned to ignore? That single question will change how you approach every fishing trip from now on. You'll stop being just another angler throwing the same flashing neon sign and start being the one who presents something new, something different, something the fish can't help but investigate. That's when you go from hoping to get bit to making it happen. Thank you so much for watching. If this video gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more content that goes against the grain. Now, I want to hear from you. After hearing all this, what's the first weird or forgotten lure in your box that you're going to give a second chance on your next trip out? Let's discuss it in the comments below.